That comic podcast.
All right.
What's up? What's up?
Hey, Buzz.
Hey, you missed that chainsaw.
Yeah, man. Listen, I'm glad to be on with you tonight, and we're doing, and I like this idea because you are the horror aficionado of the group, and I know
There is somebody.
You and John you guys did the last show where you talked about your top 5 zombies, right? And tonight we're doing your top 5 slashers.
Sir, yeah. And it's tough to do a top 5. You know what I mean? I'm going to tell you, like, as soon as you start putting it together, it immediately goes past 5, like right away. And then you have to tailor it back because, you know, it's a top 5. So we're getting down to the core stuff that matters the most. This is maybe not everyone's favorite, maybe not everyone's personal picks,
right?
But we're looking at elements around the subject matter, which is slashers today.
Honestly, I think I actually prefer slasher flicks when it comes to horror, just because it's I think it was probably the first kind of horror film I was introduced to.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So, all right, I'm going to be quiet for a moment. I'm going to let you take it from here, so and I'll jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, out of curiosity, like, what was the first slasher movie that you've ever seen?
Well, the very first slasher movie,
Yeah.
I want to say it was Halloween.
Okay,
it had to be Halloween because I honestly, I don't think I've ever been more afraid of Captain Kirk's face.
Right.
Failed out like that.
The classic.
Yeah.
You know, I saw a video of them making that. How they make one of the camera guys' name is Tommy Lee Wallace. Tommy Lee Wallace is the director of the original It movies.
Ooh.
Or TV series that became a movie. But Tommy did a video on how he made the Michael Myers mask because it asks for the character's called the Shape. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
He's not so much as Michael Myers. He's supposed to be like the soulless, lifeless thing. So, you know, the Shatner mask was popular at the time in '78, being like a Star Trek collectible from Don Post Studios, and so they took one and ripped off the sideburns, hairsprayed the hair back, and then hit the face like with white, just kind of casting it, and so you still see some flesh kind of around the sides and stuff. And that was how they made it. The goal was to make this mask that was unidentifiable, like faceless human, if you will. And I don't even think that, like, the whole Captain Kirk thing was like a big deal at the time for using it. Like, really, no one caught on to that till like way later. And from what I understand, William Shatner is pretty honored.
He would be.
Yeah, he's a guy that likes that stuff. So pretty cool factoid.
That is a pretty cool fact because I never knew that's how it worked behind the scenes then.
Yeah, it's a very low budget movie, Halloween, and you know, they were kind of just working on the fly with what they had, and it happened to catch a wave that, you know, audiences responded to, and it's on the list, and we'll get to it. The top 5ers.
Yes. Now this list, would you say it's like it's your personal or like a it's your personal list, but I think a general list that you think a lot of people.
Yeah, it's got some of my, you know, it's got stuff on there that I can't deny, you know, personally would have to be a pick. You know, my tastes change as new stuff comes and goes, and there's stuff that's hot right now and stuff that used to be hot, and somebody is making something right now we haven't seen yet that's going to be hot next. But I picked these guys because I felt like these 5 are the number one contributing slasher movies slash franchise, no pun intended. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's like these supernauts of slashers that are undeniable. You know.
Okay.
Top 5. Start. You want me to start? We'll go with 5.
Well, do we want to start 1 or let's start from 5.
That's what I think that we build up to it. So yeah. Top 5, number 5 for me, coming in at 5 for me was Scream with Ghostface, and a lot of people would put him as number 1 with the current trends and things like that.
Okay.
I have him at 5 because it's Wes Craven, and he is reinventing a genre that he already contributed to, which we'll get into later. So he's coming back around for like a second serving, if you will.
Okay.
By not quite lampooning a genre he got famous in, for another film we'll talk about, but sort of reinventing the genre. When Scream came out in '96, the slasher had died off, and so Scream reinvigorated a slasher genre. It even took me a while to, as much as I loved the first movie, it took me a while to accept that this Ghostface guy was just going to keep coming back. I knew my other slashers and I was very comfortable with them, and it wasn't that I wasn't open to a new slasher as much as it was like, all right, well that was really good. Okay, you got me on that. And we're going to talk about tropes a lot this whole time, things that are constantly reused in slasher films. And Scream gives you almost all the tropes.
I think that's probably what made Scream. That's what pushed Scream to. And I get the list. It was Scream at 5. I totally understand that. Yeah. And is it because though they do list all the tropes in the film as the film is going?
I picked Scream because A, it's still happening, it's still around, it's hanging on, in the culture. B, it reinvigorated a culture that had already done well, so it's responsible for bringing the slashers back. So it has to be in the list.
Okay.
And you can dice out what numbers you like. If you like 1, 2, 3 is kind of kooky.
Yeah.
And then they get into the other stuff, and then they're rebooting it, and they got some new stuff coming, which is awesome. Love it. And you can see him; he's in the background right there. But so they get on the list for reinventing the genre. They get on the list because they're still hanging around. They've got the longevity, and they pick up on something we're going to talk about often is this element of the black cloaked figure. This figure that is you don't know who it is. You can't tell who it is, and every time you think you know who it is, it's not that person. And these are elements that come from the slasher genre. The slasher genre sort of originates in Italian giallo movies. I know I sent you some links to this stuff.
Yes.
Mario Bava is a great director in that line. Dario Argento. Giallo, just not to get too off topic on the list, but giallo I'm going to keep bringing up because it is a 60s Italian film style using all the tropes in slashers first. Dramatic kills, over the top, blood over the top, barbaric weapons like their bare hands. The killers are usually gloved with black gloves. You don't know who they are. Faceless in a mask of some kind. And if you go through a lot of the giallo stuff, it's almost its own genre, predating the slashers that are on our list. So I wanted to bring up giallo films for that reason. There's a great one called Blood and Black Lace.
Yes. I watched that trailer.
Yeah, it's a great one. Lots of great colors, dramatic kills. The beautiful woman is always like the victim.
Yeah.
It can be one woman. It can be multiple women. You'll think you'll know who the killer is, and then you'll find out that person got killed. So the giallo style, they have crazy names for their movies and stuff. And a lot of, I know, our audience and stuff are unfamiliar with that stuff. So if you're looking for throwback slashers to sort of visit, they're all available for streaming. Just look up giallo film.
I think one that people might be more familiar with that you sent me was probably Black Christmas, because that did have a reboot.
Right. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, because the giallo genre and Black Christmas are my 2 of my 3 honorable mentions on the list.
Nice.
You can't deny them. Black Christmas is disturbing as all get out. It's the first time you're getting POV of the killer.
Right.
It's the first movie to really sort of do that. A lot of other times it would be camera pans and someone's in the silhouette in the window. But here we are in Black Christmas. They're in a sorority. There's someone living in the attic. They have no idea they're there. And they're calling them from inside the house. And you're seeing the camera is playing as the stalker. The killer in Black Christmas is the camera. So he's like watching them, through their closets and bedrooms and things like that.
And you know what? I think that style it makes the movie a little bit more creepy, because you as the audience are now like seeing things happen through you're the killer at this point.
Yeah, you're not outside of the situation. You're inside of the situation. And Black Christmas is really the first movie that sort of does that for us. It's from like the 70s, and it puts you in the seat of the killer and the victim at the same time. And very disturbing film. So definitely a must see if you're a slasher fan and you haven't seen it yet. And not the remake. The remake is horrible. make sure you catch out the original Black Christmas.
You know what? Honestly, I think the original, especially when I was watching the trailer, I was like, yeah, this is kind of creepy. Like granted, like if you're watching it now because I'm so inundated with like CG effects and all, the movie itself is going to look like
it's dated. It has a dated look to it.
It looks dated, but the creepy factor of it, like,
is 100. Yeah.
Yes.
The creepy factor, and the noises. Excuse me. In the phone, he's using the phone to call, so it's like Ghostface also using the thing to change the voice.
Yes.
Like, there's probably, I hate to say it, but there's probably no original slasher film because they're all kind of using what the one before it did. The directors who are making these slasher films are fans of these other films we're talking about.
Yes.
So they're putting that stuff in, but can't say enough good things about the giallo genre and Black Christmas. And before we get into number 4, I will say that it did not make the list because a lot of audiences today don't know about it, so it would be almost pointless.
Ooh.
But don't forget the advent of Psycho and Alfred Hitchcock and the famous shower scene. So I want to just honorable mention. Psycho has to make the list for honorable mention. It's the first one in an American audience that really was like, makes you feel kind of a certain type of way, about that sort of voyeur killer.
Yes, Psycho was crazy though. Like, that is a good one. But I can understand why it's honorable mention though.
Honorable mention, yeah. I wanted to put them in there. It's a little bit out of order, but they're going to help us figure out why these other ones are here.
They're the predecessors.
Moving on to number 4. I cannot leave him out at all, but I've got to put in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as number 4. Now, it doesn't have a ton of copycats. One of the things I'm going to get into later on the list is taking from, we've just got done talking about taking from the other genres, kind of using some of the tropes again,
right?
Expanding on it. Texas Chainsaw does something still to this day incredibly unique. Is it makes it like the grindhouse gritty. It's real. You feel like it could really happen. Yeah. And the storyline, is taking from cultural lore, taking from the Ed Gein. Psycho took from Ed Gein as well. And Texas Chainsaw is doing something that there's not even like a ton of blood in it. You know what I mean? It's mostly like this visceral, real world scenario.
Right.
People lost on the road, looking for help.
Now,
stranded.
If you don't mind me asking, was Texas Chainsaw Massacre like one of the first films to kind of like use like in real life lore like that?
Well, Psycho was using reflections of like the Ed Gein stuff, where he's keeping dead people in the house, and he, like, I believe Ed Gein likes mother. He kept the mother in the house like when she died, and like that's kind of what what's his name Hitchcock was doing with the Psycho killer. Is the mom. He's dressing up as the mother to be the killer. It's getting bizarre. You know what I mean? Like these bizarre murders in American history absolutely influence these kinds of movies. So yeah, Texas Chainsaw is taking from like cultural, historic stuff, and I mean even the intro of the movie, it talks about how it was like a real event, and the kids were like traumatized from it, and like they were never seen again. And then the movie starts. You know what I mean? So you're getting that based on a true story. Yeah, visceral, like docu style, like you have no idea what you're about to see kind of thing. But if I'm not mistaken, I do believe like when it first came out, some people thought it was real. They were just, and that's the power of movies. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No cap. I thought Texas Chainsaw was real when I was young. I was like, I don't think I'll ever drive down there. No road trips for me.
Right. Let me stay out of Texas. Moving on to number 3, I some of my first experiences with slashers was Nightmare on Elm Street. Not the first one, but the third one. So I'm coming in late, as a fan, seeing the merchandising around this character as he becomes popular and mixing again like horror with humor, like we talked about in some of the zombie stuff. Yeah. Nightmare on Elm Street is number 3 on there for me because I feel like it's got the most sequels and expansive of the universe. I feel like it merchandised itself first. It was like people really fell in love with, when you talk about slashers, you're talking about the killer becoming the star of the movie. And the final girl is absolutely the star, but the killer haphazardly in the cultural movement becomes the star in the movie. People are getting them tattooed and they're on their clothes, So yeah, with Nightmare, Freddy Krueger, another, sort of visceral character, kind of getting at you in your dream space, like he's kind of unkillable. It's the idea of him that's fearful, not so much like this physical thing you have to like outrun.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, what started off Wes Craven, who did Scream, gives us Nightmare on Elm Street with this visceral backstory about who this guy was in real life and how just terrible he becomes in his death, if you will, like in Afterlife Supernatural. So with spawning such a cavalcade of like sequels and spin-off stuff, Freddy had to be on the list. People to this day, I mean, Rick and Morty are lampooning the character. You know what I mean? Every kid who's never seen the movie knows about the guys with the guy with the knives on his fingers. Like, so this list is made up of what culturally, like, has held on. You know what I mean?
Like these are out. It sounds like to me like these are the goats of horror.
These are the goats, and there are a lot of goats of horror. So I have to say again, like, if you're mad at me, let's talk in the comments, because like this is me sort of just trying to distill it down to the best spices in the spice rack. Every spice is valuable, you know what I mean? But this, I got 5 spices to pick, man. Like, there's 50 spices. Like, I only get 5 here. But yeah, Nightmare, you got the marketing, you've got the visceral feel, you've got the real world setting, and then it gets more extravagant as the movies go on, and takes something that probably wasn't intended to do so well, and is like, all right, now we've got this whole universe,
right?
And Robert Englund playing the character as the veteran Freddy Krueger goes so far from 2, 3, 4. Some of them are not as good as others, but
yeah. I think my favorite one was probably Freddy's Dead.
Yeah, Freddy's Dead's wild. That's a wild one. A bunch of weird characters in that one too. And that's something you'll see a lot, in slashers, is sort of this like gallery of human characters that represent like each walk of life that's like trending in the culture.
Yeah.
The hot girl, the innocent girl, the stud, the geek.
Yes.
A lot of token characters.
Every time. But you know what though? It plays true. And I think that's probably why there's like this kind of, horror itself has amassed such a large following from people from all different walks of life, because that's what happens in those films. You got this ragtag group of people, like either they are all friends or they somehow get lumped together for some reason, and that night is the night where things go crazy.
It's interesting because as the slasher genre blew up through the 80s, we started to get, it's late 70s into the 80s, we started to get reasonable killers. So it was like, you got the campground stuff, you've got the maniac redneck, you've got, psychos, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get into, these other things where they're starting to copy each other and using those types of kids that we're like talking about. Now they're doing things like you've seen in Scream, where those kids sort of become the killers.
Yes.
So you've got like a killer, and then within the group of like survivors, the killer might exist also. And so it's almost like a double-edged sword for slashing in movies, is now that like the concept of the slasher has infected the group that's supposed to be like beating them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like none of the kids in Nightmare on Elm Street really sort of ever became Freddy. He played with the idea in their dreams that they would have the glove on and sort of being affected by it. It was all illusory, playing off their fears, where, when you get into Scream, it's like, oh crap, like this character who I think is surviving the attacks from Ghostface, I found out in the next scene was wearing the damn mask. So these are elements again from Giallo stuff. They would do it in Giallo a lot. When you watch his Giallo films, these Italian films, it was like, this female lead gets killed, and then you think it's this other female lead, and then later you find out that like they've been killed and they're not the killer. And so again, the tropes, man, the tropes are what make the slasher. So
a quick question about Freddy itself, right? Because it seems like I understand, like, most of the slasher flicks that we watch or consume now is it's a human man or person in a suit, mask covered.
Yeah.
Yeek, yeek, yeek.
Yeah.
But Freddy was very different in the sense of like they made it a supernatural thing. And I remember, listen, I'm sure the first Nightmare on Elm Street caused a lot of insomnia.
Yeah. It's still a very dark movie, and bizarre how he. You know what I'll say about Freddy that I think a lot of people miss, and even I miss it sometimes because it's such a character, and I fall into the character and what he's doing next, and I always sort of forget this, but he's really like the slasher on my list that gets a backstory. You know, like we're all sort of still waiting for a Jason backstory. You know, and Rob Zombie's Halloween's gave us way more backstory than anybody thought they'd ever get from Michael.
Yeah.
But yeah, Freddy is, you know, son of 1,000 maniacs is what they used to call him, or son of 10,000 maniacs, something like that. And, you know, the mother was, you know, like in an asylum, and so you're getting like all this disturbing detail for what made him like who he is, and it's like, you know, that was, I think the lore around him and the humor, they would have good soundtracks with popular bands at the time, and then the merchandising, the marketing, and really just the accessibility of Robert embellishing the character. Here's a guy that doesn't want to take the makeup off at the end of the movie and never be related to it. This is a guy to this day who is getting a Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame on Halloween for his role. So, you know, kudos to Mr. Englund, who is an amazing gentleman, and so dedicated to the character and the longevity and the lore, and obviously it means so much to him. So I think Freddy is top 3 because he becomes a cultural icon. He's crossing boundaries. You know, I think he appeared in the Goldbergs like a couple years ago in one of those characters, like Robert Englund put the makeup back on. You know what I mean? Like,
wow,
he's crossing over. You know, so yeah, he's a heavy hitter in that respect. But yeah, he gets that backstory that you're not seeing, and you're not really seeing the backstory in Texas Chainsaw as much as it's just kind of who they are. You know, it's just for real people, and you're not getting a backstory so much in Scream because they keep changing it to keep you guessing. You know, you have some backstory, but it keeps switching. So, you know, Freddy's cool in that way that you're getting so much more lore for him, and you've had a lot of time to do all that lore.
Yeah, and then there was the glove.
The glove, right?
I think that put Freddy over the top.
Right.
Definitely that glove.
That's what I'm saying. Like in the Giallos, the weaponry was always like a cleaver or a butcher knife or a scalpel, you know what I mean, or a straight razor. So that's the 60s, you know, like Nightmare on Elm Street's the 80s. So 20 years later, you know, it's impossible for Craven to not have been influenced by these murder movies from Italy as a young filmmaker, and then want to bring that stuff into his own character. So
shout out to Wes, because he did a terrific job.
He did it twice. Yeah, he did it twice. You know, it's ironic. He was very dedicated to the craft. But yeah, man, moving into number 2, you know, we're not going to play around. We're going right to Friday the 13th, who, you know, was one of the first independent horror films to get a widescreen release.
Right.
So it made so much money and establishes a new genre. You know, the campground killer. You're getting backstory. You know what I mean? But you know, not like as much as Freddy, but you're getting some backstory to kind of, you know, motivate the character. Yeah. And it spawned like 30 knockoffs the next year. Like the next year, like all these movies came out. I couldn't bother remember half of them. You know, The Final Terror is one of them. Is another great one. It's like a campground killer thing. You know, it's a rare movie. But the VHS market blows up. These movies do well in rental, and then, you know, it does so well that they're like, everyone's like, we need a campground, we need a wooded area killer, we need a camping murderer thing, and then you get like Sleepaway Camp, which spawned like 3 or 4 movies, and so you know, Friday the 13th, number 2, Jason. He didn't wear the hockey mask in the first one. The mom's the killer in the first one. The second one, he's got the pillowcase over his head, and then the third one, you get the hockey mask. But you know, I think he beats Nightmare because the hockey mask is still to this day, it's like the Superman S. As soon as you see a hockey mask, you're thinking Jason. You're not thinking actual hockey as a sport.
at all.
I mean, yeah, and it's another one where anybody can put it on and all of a sudden become like that
yeah,
character.
you're Jason.
Yeah, Freddy particularly is a certain character, but that hockey mask, man. Kane Hodder is notorious for playing him the most. He's the one that brought in the heavy breathing, to seem like he was like possessed. Jason's one of my favorites because so many things have been done with them. You get all the way to where he's becoming almost a supernatural thing, and like Jason Goes to Hell.
Yes,
and then he goes to space in part 10 or X, Jason X. So and those are wacky takes, but I love the fact that we're just playing with the unkillable evil that can keep coming back. You know what I mean?
And you know what? I love that about Friday the 13th. As a matter of fact, I have the whole digital box set, and I've watched the original box set before. Yeah. I love Friday the 13th. I think my favorite one is Jason Goes to Manhattan.
It takes Manhattan. And
Jason Takes Manhattan.
8. Yeah.
And it was here's this one scene, and it was a wake up call for me. Because I used to always watch horror films, and be like, why doesn't anybody ever try to fight back? Have we just given up?
Right. That's the one where he fell in the street.
The one guy on the
rooftop. Him on the roof, right, and gets his head knocked off. But it's funny because I remember seeing these movies when they came out, and that was the mindset. The mindset at the time was, it's doing the Walking Dead thing. Like, what would you do if you were in this scenario?
Yes.
And, kids growing up in those times, in those late 80s, they're like, oh, I'd whip his ass. I would do this. I would hit him. It's like, so everyone's sort of like, he hasn't been killed. We're already on part 8. He's unkillable. He keeps regenerating. And it's like, all right, well, who hasn't taken a shot at him? You know what? He's going to hold on to a rudder. He's going to go all the way into the harbor from New Jersey, out of a lake. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's awesome, dude. The ending of that, when he's in the tunnels and the sewage goes and melts over him, and he turns into like the little kid.
Yes.
And he's like all crying. It's like, he was just a boy. You know what I mean? So it's fun to play with that character. I hope we get some new stuff soon for him, because there hasn't been anything new in a while. But we're getting that new TV show.
I'll accept the new Friday the 13th. I think one of the a lot of people didn't like this one remake, but I enjoyed
the 2009 one. Yeah,
it was the one that showed him actually running at people, and I was like, okay,
he was top speed. Yeah,
and I was like, this is perfect. I needed to see that, because that was the other question, and I think it was I had that same question for Michael Myers. It's like, all right, so if we're going to run away, and we know this guy is just walking, why? How do we not escape? How do we not escape?
I know. I think the fast killer chasing you down, like, is scary for sure. Mm-hmm. But the one that is moving slow at you gives you time to sort of witness your own demise.
Yeah.
You don't really have a lot of time when you're hyper and running and going crazy. It is intense and it's visceral for the audience to watch, but the slow burn kill, the slow stalk toward you, sort of funneling you into a trap and you can't get away. And sometimes they trip and fall unbeknownst, like, to whatever reason. Sometimes they just get to a locked door. But it's like you're giving the viewer and the final character time to kind of watch their death creep up on them, which is sometimes more disturbing than it just all being racy and fast right in your face.
Yeah, and you know what? I thinking about it now, it's like that is a little bit more menacing. Just being walked down.
Yeah, I mean, I like them both. Like, they work really well, Yeah. And I love Derek Mears in the 2009 Friday the 13th remake because he's more brutal, kind of like what Rob Zombie did with Michael Myers, and his remake made him more brutal. It was a great take on the stuff, but going back to like sort of those original tropes again, is that slow burn kill. It's like you watch the sort of like insanity build versus it just all being in your face.
So this is interesting that you have Friday the 13th at the 2 slot. So I think I know who the number 1 is.
It's gotta be Halloween, man.
Yeah,
it's gotta be Halloween.
And I'm curious, why Michael Myers over Jason?
Michael Myers, people culturally, it's that mask. They love that guy, and that. I mean, I could watch TikToks all day of people freaking out in their car. Just seeing somebody show up in the corner with the mask on, man. And it's like, Halloween in '78, Carpenter does something that we had not seen before. So yeah, well, in American audiences, because again, he's a fan of the Giallo stuff, or the Giallo stuff, however you pronounce it. So he's bringing that stuff, that slow stalk, the masked killer, using barbaric ways to kill people, closing in on you slow. You know what I mean? Never finding out who it is. You shoot it, it disappears. You know what I mean? So the mystery, the shadow element, the silence, there's like nothingness to it. So it's like you want more, right? And you're watching, Laurie run through the movie and just slowly go crazy. You know what I mean? Yes. And the movie was only supposed to be a one-off. And so it's supposed to be a spree killer sort of thing where it's like it was random and there was going to be no explanation for it. And those are all tropes out of the Giallo stuff, is they don't always explain everything. They just lead you down this demented corridor of like what could happen. And you're now in it. And the movie obviously had so much success it spawned a sequel and then a whole generation of movies that go off on a tangent in directions with the concept and some go good, some go bad. In my opinion, people are fans of all of it. It's got remakes now. So Halloween gets the first one because of how much impact it had and how much impact it's still having to this day. And, Friday the 13th is sort of that annual thing. It's like, oh, it's Friday the 13th. The date came up, you know what I mean? So it brings it up. But Halloween, is coming every October.
Yes. And
these movies are going to recirculate. And we don't always need a new one. Sometimes going back and watching the original is like just as good. And Halloween 2, as an honorable mention, expands the storyline and gives you more backstory on who he actually was and stuff like that, which is kind of fun. But it wasn't necessary to do well as a standalone. And it bred a franchise. It's also the first thing to do the Steadicam, so you're like watching, the camera kind of follow the scene.
Yeah.
Whereas like Black Christmas at the POV, which is like you are the killer from the camera. So there's these things that it brings in that the Steadicam is now used in almost every horror movie as you pan across a room or across a cabin or across a background. So they're doing things in with it again to expand on the genre and also bring in elements from the Giallo stuff in the '60s that the audiences watching Halloween don't know about because the movies are more rare, and kind of giving you like an American take on them, which is what this entire list is.
And you know what? When you talk about like certain techniques that they brought from like previous generations of horror movies or directors, like one of those things I think, which really it makes like horror films unsettling for me, is like there's this one trick that I think Alfred Hitchcock started it. It's using absolute silence. So you can only by the time of the actual unaliving of said person, you hear the hear the life almost leaving out. You hear the footsteps, you hear the gut stabs, and it's like very, like you said, very guttural and visceral. So as you're hearing these things, you're like, oh my goodness, this is terrible, right? And
I mean, it's funny too because like when you look at big blockbuster movies, there's so much sound and effect, and like it's like sensory overload, and like those are cool, from Marvel. I think when it comes to horror, you want to play more on the senses, the natural senses.
Yes.
And you've got eyes and you've got ears in front of the movie, so why not use them, Surround sound, it sounds like it's coming from behind you. You need to play, and the absence of something to focus on can cause fear and anxiety because there's nothing there that's capturing your attention. So seeing a kill in shadow or seeing something that goes off screen into black and you just hear the sound, that's going to make it more horrific. And Hitchcock used all those techniques. It's going to make it more horrific because your mind is going to fill the blank in more so than having to see like the needle go in the eye or something like that.
Right, because our minds
don't get me wrong, don't get me wrong, like those visceral visual kills do more, to the senses of the viewer. But you don't need a whole lot to, just Dracula's hands coming across in shadow is enough to make chills go up your spine. So sometimes less is more when it comes to the slasher genre.
I believe that as well. And I think when it comes to like, the later movies and franchises, when it kind of gets a little bit ridiculous, is because I think it's because they do start adding a little bit too much to it.
Everyone's looking for a way to like reinvent it. I was gonna say earlier one of my favorite slashers that didn't make the list, but I would love to put it on it, is My Bloody Valentine, because it's like this. You're using now the holidays. You know what I mean? So you've got April Fool's Day as another slasher movie. You've got New Year's Evil, which is another slasher movie. You've got Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is the Christmas killer, which like people were so appalled by that film that they mixed such a happy holiday with like a killing. And it was like, yeah, so Halloween and Friday the 13th really at our top two slots spawned all these ideas that people were like, what if we did this? And you're seeing it now with Terrifier being like, what if people don't like clowns, they don't like killers and slashers? Let's put it together and make something like different for people. And now you've got the clown slasher, which is ripping his way through the culture and sort of captivating audiences around the world. You know, and 20 years from now, it'll be interesting to see, you know, how that fan base holds up for that character as well. Because, you know, the top 5 is made up of all those that sort of like bent and bred the genre in a bulk way.
Now, all right, I have a question, and it has to do not so much as with the top 5, but slasher flicks in general, right? I think we can always have a new slasher flick, right?
Yeah.
And it can always be good. Would you say slasher flicks, maybe now more so, depend on the slasher more so than like the story itself? Because like you said, sometimes it's like they don't have to explain that. It's just something happening.
Right. Yeah, I think you have to be careful because, you know, you can have a good idea for a slasher and you can go out and do it, and they can just miss and fall flat. And I think it has to be centered around things like you're seeing it now with like Black Phone and like all these other movies coming out, you know, because they're doing something that is like, I don't want to say new, but more timely with where maybe like people are in the world. And like, because that's the thing, like there's a ton of horror movies where cell phones didn't exist, so you could do a lot with that. And now you've got, you know, everyone has a cell phone all the time, and so that you have to consider that now in like your story writing. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I just think the landscape changes, you know. And you know, obviously in Black Christmas, you know, they're on a rotary phone, and like the police are less responsive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, so just looking at the times, there's the slasher genre is here to stay, and there's always going to be a new way to do it. And you know, I think there's so many I need to get caught up on myself because I've spent so much time studying these old ones that these new ones are piling in, and you're getting like interesting takes on stuff. And I think it's all coming from the top 5. But I think, you know, it's like mixing colors together to make a new color. And the slasher genre is sort of like an open canvas for doing that. The tropes. It's all about the tropes. The tropes are there.
Listen, one trope that will always make me mad, and I people in the comments, if after you watch them, you get to this point, chime in and let me know what you think. But when people fall in the chase scenes, it really bothers me because
like,
sometimes there's nothing to actually trip on.
Like, are your shoes tied together? How did you do that? Like, I would be leaping over stuff that was taller than me in fear to get away. Like scaling fences, you know?
I'd be doing parkour out this.
That's what I'm talking about. To get out of the way, man. I got to get out of the way. There's an interesting movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it, called Cabin in the Woods. And it
so much about
it takes all of the tropes in every slasher genre, puts them all in one movie, and it kind of is the kill shot slasher movie of all slasher movies. And it's definitely worth a viewing. It's a little bit older, but still relevant in horror history and slasher genre because it kind of does everything all at once. And it's a far out concept, but Cabin in the Woods, if you guys didn't check that one out.
Yeah, I've heard Cabin in the Woods is very crazy. I have to sit down and watch that.
Hemsworth is in it before he was Thor. So it's definitely worth checking out.
Oh,
Story wise, I don't want to spoil too much of it, but there is a like underground organization that is creating these slasher scenarios, and so people think they're going on like a regular cabin trip, but the cabin is rigged by this like intelligence group who are working technology to the point where they're like, all right, release the fog, you know what I mean? And like they've got cameras on everything, and the victims don't know they're in it. And there's this other group of people that are also betting on whether or not they'll make it. And so they're taking like all the tropes and the slasher genre to the next level by sort of just putting everything all in one. You know, there's just like this sort of secret group that's sort of causing it all. And it's another dynamic, you know, and it's worth a mention because it adds a dynamic to the slasher genre that I had never seen before I seen them. A lot of CGI, you know, some of it doesn't hold up, but still a cool concept.
Okay. So let me ask you, because there are, you know, there's a new age of slasher flicks now. If you had to, or if you wanted to, like, what would you say would be like a current top 5?
Oh, it's the top 5 currently is absolutely. Well, I probably reverse some things. I'd go top 5 probably be
Rough, isn't it?
It's tough. Well, I know number 1 would be Terrifier, and I know number 2 would be still Ghostface because he's still doing stuff. You know, number 3 could be, you know, if you're, it's not really slasher. You know, number 3, you know, you caught me off guard on that one. I know it's Terrifier. I know it's Ghostface.
Okay.
For 3, they could be building this black phone thing in the right direction.
I saw the first one. I don't know if it needed a second, but I don't know.
Right.
I might.
But when they get sequels, it's proving something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't necessarily, you know, think they're the best or whatever like that. But that, you know, if we're looking at top 5 right now, I'm looking at what is currently active, like right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are they doing?
Frankly, man, I'll go out on a limb here. You know, what's catching on too is this like made on video to look real stuff on YouTube, like the VHS franchise.
Yeah.
Like, you know, my stepdaughters are into it. I kind of watch what like the kids are into to see, you know, what's there. You know, maybe Pennywise is on that list. You know what I mean? I don't know. It depends on how well this Crystal Lake TV series does. That's like rebooting the Friday the 13th franchise.
You know what? I would check that out, and hopefully they do right by it, because, you know, like I sometimes I don't think certain genres need to be touched. Like, you can always add on, but like, just don't change.
Yeah,
like the
like Blumhouse just did 3 Halloween movies, and there was a lot of misfire there, and a lot of people were unhappy with them. And as much as I love James Jude Courtney in the role of the Shape and the way the mask looks and some of the directing and Jamie Lee coming back, you know, I support all of it, but it just didn't land where a lot of us kind of wanted it to land. And that's what happens when you dip back in. You know what I mean? Like, people didn't like Rob Zombie's Halloweens.
Really?
It was a split crowd for years until the new Halloweens from Blumhouse came out and failed. And then the split crowd was like, oh, that Rob Zombie stuff wasn't so bad because I didn't like what I just saw. You know what I mean? But like, going as like a top 5 for right now, I mean, it's nothing but Ghostface and Terrifier, Art the Clown, Ghostface, Terrifier. It's just nonstop Scream and Terrifier. And I think that's going to be those are going to be tough to outdo. Like, somebody's going to have to commit to something new for Friday the 13th to claim that crown back. Terrifier didn't make my top 5 because it's still new. It's still got to go through the test of time. This top 5 are the guys that busted out the gate on it. So moving forward, they can keep going with Scream. Will they keep going with Terrifier? I know they have a 4th one coming out. I don't know how much more they're going to do after it. Money talks. You know what I mean? If things do well, they'll want to do it. I know in movie making that if you make the money back you spent, people are usually willing to spend the money again to see if you can double down. And that's why you get so many sequels.
And folks that are watching this, let us know what your top 5 slasher flicks are.
Please, yeah. Like, if I
Drop
missed
them in the
something, let me
comments.
know.
Let's have this talk.
Let me know if I missed something. What else can we talk about? I think that's pretty much it, man. That's the top 5.
Yeah, that is the top 5. A top 5 I would not disagree with at all. Actually rides along the lines of my horror film experiences.
Nothing in that list that, you know, you didn't expect, right? Yeah, it's a pretty cut and dry list, and I almost feel like I don't even need to do it. You know, I feel like everybody kind of has their top 5 in their head. Everybody has their number 1 for sure. But yeah, you know, Halloween 1978 still holding strong. You know, still scaring people in the streets.
Oh yeah, and I, like you said earlier, I think the ones that you have listed, those are the undeniable
Yeah, and that's why they're my top 5, because they're undeniable. I would love to put Black Christmas in my top 5 for being the first POV, because the POV is like very common nowadays.
Yeah.
But they, there's only really one of those movies, whereas like the others have all spawned, sequels and rip-offs and remakes, and they need to be there. So, but yeah, that is it. That is my top 5 slashers. I don't know what I'll do next. Maybe top 5 horror movies of all time.
Of all time?
Of all time.
Oh, brother, yes.
Across all genres.
Yes, please do.
Top 5 horror across all genres.
All
and
genres.
It's not going to be about money as much as it's going to be about cultural impact and cultural longevity. Things that are still hanging around. You know what I mean? Like a little sneak peek into it. Frankenstein's going to be on that list. He's not going away.
November 7th.
They keep doing Frankenstein stuff. You know what I mean? I'm not going to give you my top 5 horror movies yet, but expect things that you've heard of and you've seen a lot of, because there's just some stuff that's not going to.
Well, Buzz, I love the top 5 slasher flicks. I'm glad I was on this show with you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for checking out the trailers. It's not, these aren't for, some of these movies aren't for everybody, but for the cinephile fan, and I'm always a big fan of the legacies. Who comes before who does. You see it in sports, you see it in all kinds of things, and I think horror has legacy, and that's something that needs to be remembered.
It does. I think the history of things is always very important, because without it, where do you go from? Where do you start from?
If you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going.
There you go.
Wrap it up.
All right, you can find us at That Comic Podcast on all socials. That's Instagram, Facebook, except on X, where we're That Comic Pod. Hit us up. Like, comment, subscribe.
Follow us on YouTube.
Even more importantly so, definitely follow us on YouTube. Our channel is growing. Please be a part of the growth. We are still pretty new, but join us for the ride. It's going to be fantastic.
Join in, man. This is your podcast.
Yes. And hit that bell so you get notified of every time we drop something new for you guys. And I've been Features.
Buzz. See you guys next time.
That's that.